Alrighty, thanks for tuning in once again. It's Ishmael Sistrunk from the St. Louis American and STLAmerican.com. And you are now in the clinch with me today. I got my normal co-host, local boxing fan, boxing expert, Mike Dickson. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
What's up? What's up? What's up? Happy to be here.
All right, of course, this weekend we got the man who is the biggest name in boxing, the biggest draw, one of the only guys now that pulls aside casual as well as hardcore boxing fans to his matches. Talking about none other than Floyd Money Mayweather Jr. He had his rematch with Marcos Maidana. The first fight, Mike, if you'll remember, very good fight. Marcos Maidana brought the fight to Floyd in a way that we hadn't seen in a long time. Some people thought that Maidana won. Most of us didn't. We thought Floyd did enough to get the win, but the spirited effort was enough to get Maidana a rematch. Mike, in the rematch, Floyd Mayweather won a decision, a comfortable decision, but what did you think about this fight?
I thought it was a little worse fight than the first one as far as the entertainment factor. I did think again. Yeah, it was a tough watch, which isn't anything new with Floyd fights. They're either boring from the extent of them being one-dimensional with him using his defensive prowess to keep out of exchanges, or he's usually head and shoulders above the other guy, or whatever the case might be. It hasn't translated. His style hasn't translated into barn burners. So we all know that. But this was dull even for a Mayweather fight. I thought he won the first one. I thought he won this one as well. Used his legs a little bit more. I didn't think he looked particularly sharp at all. Matter of fact, I can probably go on record as saying this is probably the first clear sign of a diminishing Floyd Mayweather. I thought he didn't look too good against Cotto, but that was a little bit more back and forth, much more entertaining fight. This here, I think, was just a guy that 5 years ago I just can't see him landing too many shots on Floyd. Not as though he was really beating him up too much this fight, but I mean it just looked like it was a struggle for him, and some things weren't clicking. I don't know quite what it was. His hand speed didn't look just ungodly. You know what I mean? He wasn't particularly sharp. I mean, he was more precise than Maidana, obviously, but it just wasn't a good performance for him. I didn't think so. So
you feel like Floyd did worse in this fight than he did in the last fight? Because the last fight, again, it was close. Maidana landed a lot of punches, was more aggressive in that fight. But this one, Floyd, he used more movement. He stayed away a little bit more, got hit less. But you feel like still he showed more skill, diminishment in this fight than he did the previous one?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's just me, man. It's just my opinion. It doesn't mean anything other than it is Mike Dickson's opinion. But I just didn't think he looked good, man. I thought there was a little bit more, controversy associated with the first fight than was warranted. You know what I mean? I didn't think it was controversial at all. I thought Floyd won that fight, from a boxing, perspective. I just thought he controlled the fight a little bit better outside of those rough pockets within the first 6 rounds. It was dull. He wasn't sharp. He won. He clearly won, but he was dull and wasn't on point in doing so. So yeah, I think it was a more diminished Floyd than last May.
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting to me that kind of gave me the same feelings of, okay, maybe we are seeing a little bit of decline, is we saw Floyd hold a lot more than he's accustomed to doing. Like, we've seen Floyd use movement or use a shoulder roll, but it seemed like it was almost like a Klitschko fight where he would hold and clinch, anytime he got the opportunity. He was either moving to the side, using his lateral movement, backward movement, or he was holding. And the way that the officiating was going is there wasn't too much working out of the clinch, which worked in Floyd's favor. But do you think that was a strategy decision of him clinching so often, or do you think that was simply the aging part?
I think it was part of the Asian part because you noticed the clinching more, and my cousin Andre Ross is a die-hard Mayweather fan, and I remember leaning over to him in the 5th round and saying, "Man, why is Mayweather's mouth open?" I mean, I don't know if you noticed that, but he seemed like he was tiring a lot earlier. Some fights we see he looks like he never gets tired, and in other fights he might get tired, a little bit more tired late, which is par for the course in a 12-round fight. But I thought his mouth was open a little bit earlier than what we've seen before. So we all know that he's one of the most well-conditioned athletes in the world. So we know it wasn't due to lack of preparation. He's got a lot on the line with all these fights and stuff like that. So he's always been a guy that's kept himself in tip-top shape and always had enough stamina to go 12 hard. But some things you just can't overcome in a training camp, and the fatigue, a lot of whining, you know what I mean. So it just wasn't a Floyd Mayweather performance that we're used to. So I mean, he's human. He's 38, 37, going on 38. So maybe he just fought off Father Time for a little bit longer, and maybe we're starting to see some chinks in the armor.
All right. Well, let's talk about Marcos Maidana for a minute. In that first fight, the only reason he really had a chance, the reason that people thought he did a great job in that first fight, some people thought that he deserved a win or a draw maybe, is because he was so aggressive and he brought the fight to Floyd the entire night. Now, even though he was missing some of those shots, just that pure aggression and the fact that he was hitting Floyd somewhere. They may not have been scoring punches, but he was hitting them somewhere, and more than we've seen in a long time. This weekend, this fight, it seemed the exact opposite. It seemed like Maidana came out, trying to be patient. I don't know if he wanted to save himself for the later rounds. That's what I thought initially. But then even in the later rounds, he really didn't come on. Why did we see a change in strategy by Maidana?
I just think, again, at the fight party I was at, I just think that we just saw the best Maidana possible back in May. His skill set and Mayweather's is night and day. Mayweather is a guy that can go into his bag of trips and decide, well, we saw that. Okay, I fought up off the ropes last time. This fight, I'm not going to do that. He has those type of options. Maidana really doesn't have a type of skill set where, he's not going to win a boxing match with him. So anybody that thought they were going to come out looking at him shoulder rolling and the jab and 4-5 punch combinations is not. He probably was just tried to get in a little bit better shape. I didn't watch the All Access. That's just so old and boring to me. I don't watch them anymore. But I'm sure he probably brought in a nutritionist, and I'm probably said what they all say. Oh, I've never trained this hard in my life. So basically, all he had was to get in better shape and try to exert more force. Hey, I had a little success doing it in the first fight. I'm just going to try to get in even better shape and apply pressure even harder for a longer duration. So Floyd was ready for it. Floyd added a little movement in it, and evidently that befuddled Mcdonough because Mayweather didn't look sharp, but neither did Maidana.
Yeah, and maybe that's the reason. Maybe that confusion, because we've seen before Maidana get outboxed. That's always been his weakness when he fights pure boxers or guys with speed and movement. Those are the guys that give him trouble, which was why a lot of people wonder why Mayweather was standing in the pocket so much that first fight. But in this one, it seemed like that movement just really got to Maidana. He didn't know what to do. But for me, I was just thinking this guy should be coming forward and swinging the whole fight because that's what he had success with in the first fight. And I don't know if he was not in as good a shape as he could have been, if he got, a little bit of that money and just got comfortable. Hey, this, was it $3 or $3.5 million, whatever the purse was. That's his highest purse to date. Maybe he got too comfortable with that. The fact that he said after the fight that he thought he won, was just absurd, you know. And I know you want to be confident, but I mean, he fought horribly. Like you said, Mayweather didn't fight great. Maidana fought horribly, and I just don't understand. There's certain guys where you know the only chance that you have to win is to be aggressive, to overwhelm your opponent. But it just seemed like Maidana came out. You know, he was just being patient. He was waiting, throwing one punch at a time, two punches, and I just didn't understand it from the get-go. He never really picked it up. So maybe it was that confusion, but I think either way, you know, his corner was even imploring him like, hey, you got to do more, and he just never did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, matter of fact, while I'm on that, I'm going to go ahead and read Factoid. Mr. Factoid, he couldn't be with us today, but he did send in some comments, so let me read that before we move on. Factoid says, Maidana didn't fight with the same determination, didn't let his hands go the way he promised and we imagined. Made the fight easier for Floyd, who I thought was spot on in his own post-fight critique of himself, dead and slow. Factoid had it 119 to 108. He said Maidana fought like a guy who was happy about his $3 million. Again, almost exactly what I was just saying. And we've heard, you know, you heard Marvelous Marvin Hagler say, I always go to this, you know, back in the day when he was fighting. He said it's hard to get up and get on the road, you know, when you go home and you're sleeping on silk sheets and you got silk robes or something to that extent. So I wonder if Maidana, if that affected him as well, where he thinks, okay, I made it, career high payday, I'm good, and he just didn't have that hunger that he had, you know, a couple of months ago back in May.
That could be part of it. I'm interested to see what direction these guys going to win next. From your perspective, what do you think is the most logical fight for Floyd next?
To be honest, I think with Floyd now, it's almost Pacquiao or nothing, you know, because I think we've started to see Floyd's, you know, he's not pulling in the same type of crowd, the same type of enthusiasm anymore because people are understanding. And even, like I said, that first Maidana fight was an exciting fight. That's the first exciting fight we've seen from Mayweather in a while. But even the hardcore, diehard Mayweather fans that I know, most of them were like, you know, the same way. Man, this fight was boring. You know, man, I'm disappointed that I watched that. So I think we're starting to get a little Floyd fatigue. And there's really not too many people that are going to turn that around other than Manny Pacquiao. And even with that fight, you know, it's probably 3 or 4 years beyond when it should have happened. So the excitement level isn't going to be the same if they announce it today as it would have 3 years ago. But still, I think that's the only fight that'll really get people excited. Now, Floyd has dropped some hints. You know, I got a surprise, and a lot of people think that that's a fight with Manny Pacquiao. But I think if he wants to stop this trend of his pay-per-view starting to go down, he's not quite making as much money on the pay-per-view upside anymore. He's gonna have to fight Pacquiao because who else is gonna bring that excitement? People talk about Amir Khan. Yeah, that's gonna do well in the UK, but here in the US, I don't think that's gonna excite a lot of people. You can get a guy like Keith Thurman, who I'd love to see him fight, but Keith Thurman is young and inexperienced. He's not a household name. He is a knockout artist, but he still may be too green and too unknown to really get the masses excited. So who else is there that'll generate excitement?
Well, I agree 100% with every word that came out your mouth. You know, and the only thing is, I've been there for, you know, for 2 years. I like the Cotto fight, even though I thought it was 2 or 3 years late. You know, I like the Shane fight back in 2010, even though I thought that was 2 or 3 years late. But outside of that, the Guerreros and the Maidanas, you know, I'll take that back. I thought the Canelo fight was an interesting matchup. Definitely thought that was an interesting matchup. But the Guerreros and the Maidanas has been bunched in between there, and the Victor Ortizes. It's just gotten real old, man. You know, it's just a broken record. It's you know, basically, let's see if this guy can rough up Floyd. They don't, and then Floyd wins a one-sided unanimous decision. You know, it's no legitimate threat to get you, you know, excited about seeing the fight. You know, and then his whole routine is just the money man routine. It's gotten kind of old, and you know, if I'm not mistaken, I switched to Uverse recently. I didn't order the fight, but I did hit the info button just to see how much they were charging, and you know, it was up to $75. People work hard for their money, man. They want a little bit more bang for their buck, man. It's hard to drop that 75 on watching a one-sided, you know, unanimous decision, or watching an opponent that's not on par to warrant that type of money.
Right,
You know,
and the undercard was terrible. I mean, the undercard, there was absolutely nothing there at all. And that was originally, I didn't want to order the fight because of that reason, because I figured Mayweather would move more, it wouldn't be exciting. We know Mayweather's not knocking out guys. The last knockout Floyd got, if I'm recalling correctly, was Ortiz, and that was kind of a, you know, some different circumstances. It was kind of a sucker punch, if you will. So Mayweather hasn't really knocked out anybody in a long time. So it's not like, you know, a guy like Mike Tyson back in the day, that might be a 1-round, 2-round fight, and it's over. But people were excited because they got to see that carnage. With Mayweather, you know, you get to see him go, you know, box for 12 rounds, and most of the time it's not exciting. Mayweather has not gotten to be the richest man in boxing through excitement. You know, it's personality, and you applaud him for that. You say, hey man, you know how to game the system, if you will. You know, you got that personality down, you got that Money Mayweather thing down. That's made you an earner, but he just doesn't have an exciting style, you know. So it's always funny to me. A lot of Floyd fans will put down Andre Ward, but really, when you look at their fights, they're not a whole lot different. I personally like Ward fights better, but people will bash Ward like, oh, he's the boringest, terrible person in the world. But Floyd Mayweather, he fights the same, you know, similar type of style.
yeah, different guys with similar styles. You're right.
So what about Maidana? Now that he's had 2 shots at Floyd, this one again has to be disappointing. But do you think he'll still have opportunities at big fights?
Absolutely, because one thing that, I mean, he didn't give a good showing for himself, but you know, I was at a mixed party with guys and females. You know, family. I had female cousins there, and I had you know, they had friends there with other guys there with their girlfriends. So he benefited from the exposure. So you know, a couple more months down the line, if you see Mcdonough versus blank, oh, that's that guy that gave that fought Mayweather a couple times. So I mean, he walked away from it with some fat pockets, a little bit of extra exposure. He's always been a main eventer. You know, him versus Ortiz was a main event. Him versus Alexander was a main event. Him versus Josito Lopez was a main event. So it wasn't as though he got, you know, totally plucked, you know, out of the sky. He was a guy who had been around time, made some decent money. He just never had fought at this level before. So I think he'll just kind of maybe drop back down there to, you know, fighting some of the other guys Golden Boy has in the stable. We've been over this a million times. They have a ton of welterweights. You know, you can plop them in there with Roy Guerrero. You can give them a rematch with Broner. Garcia is going to need a name when he comes up to 47. Maybe that could be a first name in his entry to welterweight, even though I hear he's potentially going to fight Pacquiao if the Cold War is indeed over. You got a guy like, I think a good matchup for him, if they're serious about moving Keith Thurman into the limelight before Mayweather does get out of the game. I would like to see Thurman versus Maidana. You know, I think that just can't be a bad fight. And I think Thurman would not only win, I think he would knock him out. And I think him knocking out Maidana may be able to, you know, kickstart his campaign for maybe that. What's he got? He's got 2 or 3 fights left. Or maybe his last fight, one of the final fights for Mayweather. So, like you, he's a guy I'm high on. He's the anti-Mayweather. Keith Thurman is not in bad fights. Keith Thurman, if a guy makes it 12, it ain't for his lack of trying. You know what I'm saying? If there ever is a guy whose picture needs to be next to the phrase "bang for your buck," is him. You know, fight fans' dream has recently been on a favorite website of mine, Boxing News 24. complaining that he's been moved too slow by Golden Boy, asking for bigger names, saying that he can leave. He's not directly tied to Golden Boy. He can go to top rank if that's what it means to get bigger fighters. And he's also going to Rick saying, I'm not like these guys. I'm not scared of losing. I think I'm good. I want to test myself against the best. So you got a guy with an exciting style. I like his personality. I think he, does well speaking for himself and the things, the statement that he makes and how he deals with the media and the public. And a guy that's going on record say, I'm not scared of a challenge, and a guy that's going to come there and scrap. I just think he's a fight fan's dream, and I just hope that he doesn't get lost in the shuffle and he gets the right type of push so that he can be, his talents can be seen by a greater audience. Because I think he's a guy that's offers something to boxing and a guy that can be around for a while.
Yeah, and how often do you see nowadays, after fights or even during fight interviews while they're not fighting, they may be in the crowd. You hear people say, they say, who do you want next? Who's next? Oh, that's up to my promoter. I'm gonna leave it up to my manager, to my team. So I like it too when guys like Thurman are like, hey, I don't want to move slow. Give me the top guys. I don't care about losing. I don't care about protecting my record. I want to be in exciting fights. And like you said, he's always out there trying to knock somebody's head off. And he's skilled too. He's not just a brawler. So I agree with you. I think a fight with Maidana will be exciting. I think he will win. He has more skills, but I think that'll be a wonderful matchup. I'd love to see it. Tell me what you think about Kell Brook, because a lot of us talked about the potential between Sean Porter maybe and Keith Thurman. But Kell Brook, and we didn't get to do a hangout on this one, but he came in and, just defeated Sean Porter, actually kind of bullied the bully, if you will. So is Kell Brook a player now in either Mayweather or just in the welterweight division as a whole? Is he a major player now?
No, I don't think so. My opinion, I thought that the fight with Porter was unwarranted, really. He's a guy that, padded a lot of records over there in England, and it seemed like he was. I didn't like the fact that, and I emailed Dougie Fisher. I hadn't emailed Dougie Fisher in years, but I was looking at the ring ratings, and they had him ranked number 4. And I just thought that was absurd, because if you go to BoxRec and look on his record, his biggest win was like against Vasily Shevchenko, if I'm saying his name right. I'm terrible with those foreign names. It's a guy that he caught my attention because he stopped Ricky Haddon in the 10th round of Ricky Haddon's comeback fight that he had a couple years ago. But lost in the shuffle is this is not a misquote. He was stopped by Paulie Malignaggi in his next fight. It's on BoxRec. I've seen the fight on YouTube. He got stopped. It was on the cuts. But you never hear the word "stopped by" Paulie Malignaggi in the same sense. This dude was stopped by Paulie Malignaggi. And that was Kell Brook's biggest win. And he's acting as though he is entitled to some level high fight. Now, he got it with Porter because he was a mandatory. Looked good. He won, clearly. But I just still would like to see him. I'm just not a fan of connections, man. I know that's the way that the game goes, but connections and potential. I just like to see guys earn their merit, man. Maybe I'm old school for that, man, but I like seeing them fight up the ranks and knock off a couple good other good fighters, in order to get your position, man. It's like a lost art in boxing, man. You just don't see it that much anymore. Either this guy has this high-powered manager, so he's getting these dates, or this guy's got this promotional company, so they're forcing us on headlining HBO on Showtime cards because of who he knows, and next thing you know, they're getting some alphabet title that they're, the WBA's got 3 or 4 versions of their title, and it's just a big joke, man. And I just think he's a product of this new school of champions, man. So us title holders, I should say.
But it paid off for him, right? Now I'm looking at his BoxRec now. He fought Love Morndu, who he's a guy who's been around.
How many losses did Ndu have when he fought? How many losses did Ndu have when he fought?
12.
Yeah.
12 losses. So I mean, he fought a couple people, but when he got his shot at the title,
somebody else off of there.
I said Matthew Hatton, little baby bro Hatton. Let's see, who else do we got? Sinchenko, who you're talking about. You know, everybody else, like you said, is nobody special at all.
Yeah. So not a guy that you would have thought, just looking at black and white and ink, would have been warranted a title shot, though, right?
No, not just looking at that, but at the same time, you know, I think you can apply that all across boxing. A lot of, like you said, a lot of guys, you know, it's more either who they know or they fight the people in the right order. So we see a lot of weird stuff. The thing for me is, okay, you know, he was supposed to fight Alexander a couple times. That didn't work. But when he got his shot against Porter, he looked good. So I think it's deserving. I think sometimes guys look at, you know, well, sanctioned bodies are corrupt anyway, but sometimes you can just look at a guy's skill set and say, okay, this guy is a good fighter. He deserves a shot. Now, I think what he exposed Porter as, Porter looks so great against guys who were much weaker, who weren't strong, who didn't have solid punches. And so when he got in there with a guy who was just as strong as him, he got exposed a little bit for that unorthodox style that everybody knows, but it's just never hurt him in the past because Devin Alexander, Paulie Malignaggi, they're not guys who are really going to hurt you. So I'm interested to see more in Kell Brook. I don't think he's in the Mayweather talks because he's just not that big. But I'm interested to see. I think he can be a player in the welterweight division. So I'm interested to see who else he gets to fight next.
Gotcha.
So anything else? I'm trying to think of. Like I said, this undercard was so horrible. I'm really hoping that they do a better job. They kind of took that top rank mode on that where, well, nobody really cares about the undercard. I don't think you said you haven't seen the Mickey Bay fight yet, right?
No, I heard it was terrible.
It was. That entire undercard was pretty bad. That fight, a lot of people think that Mickey Bay lost, but we've been seeing, me and you talked about a little bit, the money team fighters are not doing very well, you know, so I don't know what's going to happen when Mayweather finally does retire and step down because it doesn't look like his stable is very good at all.
Yeah, since our last show, Jay Leon Love, you know, it's finally caught up with him. You know, he had been squeaking by, and it wasn't no squeaking by this one. We all knew that fight was headed to the scorecards. We all know how that was going to go. So, you know, yeah, he definitely, you know, got a little truth serum served to him.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we won't hold you up. There's really nothing coming up in the immediate future, so not really another fight to talk about immediately. But definitely some interesting things on the horizon. You got Manny Pacquiao has Chris Algieri coming up soon, which when Mayweather was asked about him, he kind of said, well, hey, Manny has to get by, you know, his fight first. He has to get a win, and then we can talk. So I think, you know, I had really gotten tired of the whole idea of Mayweather Pacquiao because I figured it's never going to happen. But again, I think that's really the only fight for Floyd that will excite fans, unless he does something crazy like go up to 160 and try to fight Bernard Hopkins. Well, Bernard Hopkins is out at 160 now, but unless he tries to go to 160 and get a title there or fight maybe a Golovkin type of guy, but I don't really see that happening. So it's either Pacquiao or it's going to be, you know, a couple lower fights. He's going to make significantly less money. I guess he'll get his minimum. If his minimum's $32 million or whatever, he'll get that. But Mayweather's got to do something different because right now people are, you know, like I said, people are starting to get a little fatigued. Floyd fatigued, as I'll call it.
Yes, sir. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in once again. I'm Ishmael Sistrunk with the St. Louis American and STLamerican.com, and you are now in the or out of the clinch. Peace.